Today is going to be a pretty fun one. So, as you can tell, I'm clearly doing something here, right? So, what I literally like to do was for all of the different reptile expos that I would go to, and even some presentations, depending on what the subject was, I like to bring a setup of what could be a good setup for your particular type of reptile. And obviously, there's a little bit of creative freedom and some nuance to it that would go into the discussion, but this is something that I really like to do. And the first couple cages that I got ended up either being too large, or I ended up kind of scratching up the sides a little too bit just because I wasn't loading them properly or being careful enough about it. And so recently I went and I picked up this brand new cage from Cryptic Creations right here. So Cryptic Creations, they're actually a custom cage builder here in Colorado. And so he hooked me up with one of these. And so what I was going to do was, for the expos and stuff, I was actually going to take, as you've seen in some of my other videos, is I was going to take a piece of styrofoam or something and divide it right here, and I was going to do a 50-50 split of like a traditionally decked out one, so, you know, with the usual vines and sometimes fake, sometimes real branches and climbing logs and hides and things like that. Certainly not bioactive, but a nice naturalistic looking setup. And then on the other half of the divider, I was going to do something like seasonal. And so obviously, being October 1st, the date that this is going to come out, I'm recording it a little ahead of time, but so for October 1st, we're going to do Halloween and Spooky. As we know, every year I always try to do like something involving Halloween theme for the entire month of October. Unfortunately, that's never gone over very well, and the really cool, fun stuff that I did usually involved a lot of time, effort, and money to travel around and do all the different things like diving with sharks and, you know, learning about wolves and things like that. So instead what I did is, because I am now unable to attend the October Reptile Expo that was going on in Colorado, so I wasn't able to do that, what I'm going to do, because I decided I'm going to deck out just the entire cage, and I'm probably actually going to continue to do that for some of the more seasonal events that we'll do. So for instance, this next one that will be in November, I'll do maybe like a fall or a harvest theme or something like that. But and so what I decided to do was, you know, deck out this whole thing, and I'll pull off the camera and we'll actually sit here and I'll go through this whole thing. But my partner had a really good idea that I should also do kind of like a build of the month, whether or not that'll be every single month or not. And then while I do that, I want to talk about a specific snake that may or may not be tied to that a little bit. So you might be able to see him moving around a little bit in the back. This is our little milk snake. So as I said, I'm going to pull this off. I'm going to go into how I built the cage and the different things that you can do, as well as I'm going to talk a little bit about the milk snake. So first things first, let's go check out our little milk snake. So he is what is we kind of colloquially refer to as like a pet store milk snake, to where he's not actually a, more than likely, he is not a, as he hides back here and it just wants to, it always wants to zoom in on like the leaves and stuff. It never wants to zoom in on the actual snakes. He is probably a mix of either like Nelson's or Puebloan or potentially other milk snakes, to where a lot of like the big box stores and other stores, they will just get in an animal that is just called milk snake or fancy milk snake or king snake or something like that, or assorted. You'll see that a lot of the times. And so that's why we've started to refer to those animals as just kind of like the pet store milk snake, because he's not, he's more than likely not a true of any particular species of milk snake. He's just a little mix of them. But he still looks really cool. He's the tricolor snake that I absolutely love. I've talked about him in other videos, but that tricolor is that adaptation of mimicry to use as defense to mimic the venomous elapid, the coral snake, that is also found here in the United States. There is all the fun little things that we used to say about, like, you know, red touches yellow, you're a dead fellow, red touches black, you're okay, Jack. Well, as it turns out, that's not 100% true, because there is quite a bit of very well documented aberration in both the milk snakes and in the coral snakes as well, to where if you go across and find one of these guys, it might be a tricolor king snake or a milk snake, or it might be a coral snake. We really don't know. Sometimes they're almost pure just black and red with almost no yellow or white at all. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. Let's actually get into this full build. So zooming back out, so this is from Cryptic Creations right here. This is a 36 by 18 by 18 deep. So essentially this is a 40-gallon essentially. So what that equates to is this is a very good setup for a juvenile snake. And depending on how you build it, it could work very well for a juvenile of almost every colubrid species, of ball python, of boa, of other species of snake. It can work very well for most juvenile species. 40 gallons, I feel, is a little too small for most of the ones that we do keep, including our milk snake or corn snakes or ball pythons and obviously boas. I think that's too small. But this works as a very good build for a juvenile, and even a baby. If you do it right, they will do just fine in an enclosure this large. They will do just fine. And so that's what I always like to do when I have one of these big build outs, that I can say, here's an example of how you can do it. And I have like a little shopping list, a little printout that I have on top that lists all the things in there and other things that you need and other things that can also be beneficial, like feeding tongs, spray bottles, infrared heat guns, all of that jazz. And then we can talk a little bit about how we do that for the specific species that they're looking for. Seeing as how I breed mostly ball pythons and boas, that's usually what we're talking about. But I'm certainly not limited to doing just that, and neither are you as far as creativity goes. Which leads me to this. It is very fun this is another fun way, essentially, you can have interactions and enrich your animal's life by being a little creative with how you do things. Always keeping in mind, you always want to make sure that you are keeping in mind, as I'm going to repeat that 6 or 7 times, I'm sure, your animal's safety and health as the very first priority. So every single item in here either was approved to be pet safe, is NSF safe, or wild collected things like these branches and rocks that have been cleaned and sterilized before they go into this enclosure. So you can have fun with all of the non-marketed and product commercial items that you would pick up at like your, brick and mortar store at your expo. You don't have to be limited to just those. Just remember to always keep that in mind first. So let's get into this a little bit. So I'm going to show you that we have all of the things necessary for their basic husbandry needs. So we have nice thick substrate that can hold humidity well. This is a mix of cypress mulch, sphagnum moss that's been kind of ground up a little bit, and topsoil that is organic. It doesn't have any added fertilizers or anything like that. So that makes very good substrate, allows snakes that like to burrow in, as well as it allows to hold humidity very well, which is excellent for boas and ball pythons and all those other subtropical and tropical reptiles. Then we talk about a water dish. So right here, we have a dishwasher safe water dish. Yes, the sticker is still on and on the bottom, but again, an animal is not going to be staying in here full time. He's just in here just for the purposes of this video. If I ever do the full one and setup, and I actually put an animal in here, I'll make sure that that is removed, and I'll just use one of the other ones. But I like this because it's a fun, like, little Halloween themed looking bowl. It looks really cool. I do use those in my enclosures as both hides and as water dishes. They look really cool. Amazing little product, and it's really great about these is because they're very cheap. They can easily be cleaned, and if they ever get too dirty or broken, I don't like to use the term disposable, but they're pretty close. They're very inexpensive. Then we look at hides, right? So we got the substrate, we got the water dish. Now let's talk about hides. In this enclosure, you want to make sure that, because snakes as a whole are very cryptid animals, they want to stay hidden. They like to feel secure, and when they feel comfortable and emboldened, or if they're seeking out food, other snakes, or wanting to bask, either through ultraviolet light or just wanting to warm up a little bit, they will go out and seek that. They want to make sure you provide them opportunities to feel secure, both exposed and hidden in both the warm and the cool sides. So in here we have 3 official traditional hides. This first one being this cool little skull here. This acts as the dry hide. There is no sphagnum moss underneath and in that. This is one that you can purchase from like a regular brick and mortar or chain reptile store. In the back, we have one here. This comes from like a little Halloween, just like thing from like Target or Walmart or something like that. That is, dishwasher. It's not dishwasher safe, but it's nice, clean plastic. It doesn't have any harmful chemicals. That I use a soldering pen to carve out the little back right here, and that acts as a nice little hide for him. And there's sphagnum moss tucked in there, and so that's one of the little cool hides. And then over back here, we have one more one. This is ceramic. So ceramic is used often in both working with reptiles as well as in aquariums and things. It's like a pottery, essentially. So this works very well. It can be clean. There's sphagnum moss in there. So in the addition of this, essentially what I'm doing is this is the cool side, this is the warm side. there is going to be more humidity over there because of this bowl, because of right here, and this is going to be kind of the more dry portion. With using a heat pad or a radiant heat panel, this one, I would recommend a heat pad. Actually, I would honestly recommend a radiant heat panel because I do like the above heat. But an under tank heater traditionally also works very well, just a large one that can take up a good amount of the space axis heat, thus allowing for a good thermal gradient from the nice little hot warm side for basking areas as well as over here. Now, after that, let's get into some of the cool enrichment. So obviously looking here, there are things for them to interact with and smell. We have these cool little pumpkins, we have these fun little bones, as well as that little skeleton right there. Honestly, if you were ever going to do something like this, I would not recommend this one necessarily because there are a little bit of exposed metal on the joints, as well as this little bit right here can be removed, but it works as a fun little idea because there are full plastic ones that don't have those exposed joints. I just happen to have him, and because this isn't going to be a full setup, obviously, he'll be fine. These guys are plastic. They work very well, and it's another little fun thing that's shaped differently, that smells differently, that feels differently, and so that's really good for them. So then we have little rock here that is texture that allows them to bask under here. We have climbing branches. This is the cholla wood, so this is the dried cactus that I did harvest myself naturally. So what I do is I bring it home, I clean it off very well. I will bleach clean it, or I will bake it for long periods of time in the oven to hopefully kill any of the bacteria that may or not be residing in there. Then we have, as I kick my camera stand behind me, then we have these fun little artificial plants of all sorts of the fun Halloween and fall colors that you can pick up at all sorts of different places. I do like the Dollar Tree stuff, and that's where some of these came from. However, they are usually of slightly lower quality, and so once they get kind of soiled by, well, what snakes do and what all living things do, they end up kind of not holding up very well to subsequent cleaning. So that's why they are no longer sticking around. And then we go up here. As I said before, this is using a under the tank heater, and then we have a T8. T5, apologies, a T5 UVB and UVA bulb. There you can easily have these outfitted to be a traditional socket where you can use one of the compact ones, or like say one of the new VivTech LED UVA UVB bulbs that works very well. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So there we go. And then obviously this little fun chain here. What I decided to do is something kind of fun. I decided to take these black, essentially these are the pipe insulators, but they're essentially like little pool noodles, but they're black, and so they blend in very well, and because they're that styrofoam, they can work very well with these animals. And that's where I decided to hang this chain and use it as little places to have those hung up. It is obviously not the most secure it could be, and there are plenty of other ways that you can more securely attach these guys. But again, this is just for show ideas of how you can be creative in how you take care of your reptiles. It doesn't always have to be the exact same formula, as long as you're giving them their husbandry requirements and plenty of ways to enrich their lives. And doing these fun little projects are really good and creative ways to not only give them enrichment, but to give yourself a little bit of creative outlook and outlet as well. Absolutely really, really cool stuff that I love to do, and little fun ideas. Our little milk snake has now hidden himself down there. You can see him right there. So as I want to talk a little bit more about this milk snake, because I said I'm going to do a little bit more of like the snake of the month. So milk snakes are really, really cool animals. If anyone is curious, if you would like to know why they got their names, the reason why they're called milk snakes is because farmers, when, you know, European settlers very first came here, they would go out to their barns and they would find these milk snakes in their barns where their cows and their livestock were. And so what they, for whatever reason, they thought that the milk snakes at night would come out and grab on to the cow's udders and drink milk from the cow's udders. As we know, that clearly is not true. They are attracted to the mice and rats that obviously accompany any sort of farm or rural or livestock habitation or confinement or anything where you keep your livestock, because where there is food, where it's warm, where it's dry, the rodents will come, and they are attracted to that, and the milk snakes and other snakes too are attracted to the mice and rats, and that's where they come from. Now, milk snakes are part of the genus Lampropeltis, which translating to Latin roughly means shield belly. They have very high iridescent scales, and you know, they are really, really cool, but milk snakes aren't the only ones in that group. King snakes are also the very large part of that genus Lampropeltis. And in addition to the milk snakes being that really cool tricolor mimicry pattern there are also quite a few king snakes, including Andean milk snakes, scarlet king snakes, black milk snakes until they turn black, as well as the milk snake phase, Thayeri, or Sierra Leone or Leonis king snake. Those all can be those different really cool tricolor snakes. I absolutely have always loved that tricolor pattern. I don't even really like the color red. I've just always loved the tricolor snakes. I love them to death. They're really, really cool. Just amazing, amazing group of snakes. Now, as you guys saw from the thumbnail, obviously I had some other cool stuff kind of going on here. So essentially what I did is I took those kind of like little battery operated like little bead thread lights, and I fed them through the back of that little ventilation right there, and I had them up here for that. Obviously, you would never want to have that in here because it allows something for the snake to pull down, for them to get wrapped up in, and it is something that I've actually seen happen because it is so thin and essentially so sharp. If a snake is shedding, it can actually end up getting that stuck and wrapping around and can cause injury to your snake. So you never want to use something that's that fine, and honestly metal as well. You don't really want to use that. And then for the cool bubble effect that I used, I just threw a chunk of dry ice in here. Obviously, do not throw dry ice into your reptile's watering dish to make a cool effect for a fun video or for a TikTok. Please don't do that. But it thought it was a really cool effect that worked really well for this kind of really cool spooky motif. So, in conclusion, amazing idea, I personally think, and I'm aware that every time I do an enclosure build or an idea or something, I always get people yelling at me or telling me that this isn't how they do it or the way it should be. This is only to give you an idea of what you can do. There is no 100% only one way to take care of your animals properly. If their husbandry requirements, their humidity, their heating, their security, all of that is taken care of properly, and if you give them enriching lives, which obviously this is full of enrichment, then you are doing really good by your pet reptile, whatever reptile that may be. And also, obviously, this is a 40-gallon. You could easily put a bearded dragon or a lizard or something like here. I would go a little bit larger if you ended up going with an adult bearded dragon or an adult blue-tongued skink or something like that, but this also works very well, and it's, again, because they have the UVB, and you can add additional fixtures for basking and or different types of ultraviolet light bulbs. Really, really cool. Great customizable stuff. Highly recommend Cryptic Creations, especially if you're in Colorado, but they do ship as well. So, hey, and their lead times are not as long as Animal Plastics, as well as they use a little bit thicker and a higher grade PVC. So shameless plug for these guys, because I'll absolutely always shout out other creators or breeders or people who work in our industry who do really good jobs. I will absolutely shout them out as well. So I do recommend Cryptic Creations with those lighter lead times, especially if you're in Colorado. But to finish up, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Again, this is not the only way to do it. This is not the way that I say you should do it. This is just a way to say that you can do it, as well as another really cool, misunderstood, and, oh, yep, there's his little face. There he is. Pretty sure he's a he. A really cool way to just kind of interact and have another fun, creative way of doing something with your snake. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see what I'm going to do for the next one, I may or may not make a full video about it. I will probably just include it in the video that I will probably do for the November reptile show that I'll be doing in Loveland, Colorado. So if any of you guys are from Colorado, you want to come out and see me, see any of the animals that I'll have available, because I'll have a few baby ball pythons ready by that point, or want to see the cool cage, or just hang out and talk, or even just go see the expo and see some really cool stuff. You don't have to be just in Colorado. Come on down. It's a show me your reptile expo. I'll be doing some educational programs as well as always, and I would really love to just meet and hang out with some really cool people and just talk shop reptiles for the weekend. So again, thank you so much. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. And again, thank you again very much. Hope you're having a great day, and we'll check you next time.